welcome to all of the speakers and the moderator here. Very good afternoon. This is our second last panel before we round up with the roundtable discussion. And this panel is on employment, focusing on tourism and hydropower sector. And as a moderator, we have Dr. Jimmy Rinzin, the former National Council member from Pemagasil. Just to say briefly, Dr. Jimmy Rinzin, he has very long experiences in the parliament. And beside his long years in the parliament, he had, a very good experience in the field of, the hydropower and tourism as well, because he served as a special member in the committee to review both tourism and hydropower policy, if I recall. So, Dr. Jimmy, I wish you all the best as a moderator and the speakers, for all the speakers. Please, Dr. Jimmy, I hand over the floor to you. Thank you, La. All the best.
Thank you, La. Thank you, organizer, my colleague Dr. Sachin there, Sangi, at the backstage, Dr. Nitasha from London. Uzambo, and good afternoon, everybody in Bhutan. Very good morning to the ones viewing from Europe, America, Middle East, and late good afternoon to the ones viewing from Far East, Oceanian nations, New Zealand, Australia, and all others. Welcome to this last sort of a panel discussion, not the last program, but last panel discussion of the conference. It's on impact on employment, hydropower, and tourism. We have had a very enriching sessions since yesterday morning, starting from His Excellency Lempo, Minister of Labor and Human Resources. And then from first session to the fifth now, all these sessions have been very enriching and very insightful rather. I expect the same from this last session. In Bhutan, this COVID-19 pandemic has also hit hard, like anybody in the world. However, in Bhutan, we are lucky. We have been under the shelter of personal care and guidance of His Majesty the King. Life, although difficult, but had been very smooth, uninterrupted supply of essentials. Public service deliveries were not hampered, although with could be a delay here and there, but it was uninterrupted all in all. Our government, particularly Minister of Health, had been managing this pandemic successfully. In such unprecedented crisis, we have really managed well. Nonetheless, we have struggled, listening to all our speakers from yesterday, and also keeping ourselves abreast of what's happening in the country. We have struggled. Our government is saying we couldn't really utilize our capital budget, for instance, in this fiscal. When we have not utilized the capital budget, it would mean that we have not spent on infrastructure development. And when there's a reduced expenditure on infrastructure development, it has a recurring impact, the ripple effect on the economy. And then our revenue has really declined because so many key economic sectors had been shut. It had to be closed. For example, tourism had come to a complete halt. Almost 40%, more than 40% of our revenue we were expecting should have gone down this year. In particular, our cash cow, the tourism sector, has come to a complete halt. This has really hampered us. However, we don't lose hope. Taking cue from our royal address from the recent National Day celebration in Punakha, Bhutanese have a character to build, come back, fight. We have potential. Only thing is we need to believe in ourselves, have confidence in ourselves. Not only us believing in ourselves, but our system, the government, the policy makers, everybody should have confidence in ourselves. And here we have to build again. All is not lost with all these challenges which we had been facing up until now. Let us come back with inherent, let us demonstrate our inherent potentials. With all these challenges and with come opportunities, I would expect we have three esteemed speakers in the panel here. Later, I will introduce one by one when your turn come. We have Damcho Rinzin from Tourism Council of Bhutan. We have Tashitema, who is an assistant editor from Queensland Corporation Limited, our national daily newspaper. And third, we have Honorable Tempa Doji, member of National Council from Hunchi Zongkok. unlike in the past sessions where the speaker sequence had sort of followed on what had been available in the news page, we will follow the alphabetical order. Damjo being the first, you will speak first. Second, we will let our Tashi speak, and third, we'll round up with Honorable Tempa. Let me come to our first speaker, Damchu. Damchu is the head of our tourism promotion division in Tourism Council of Bhutan. He has a bachelor's degree from Canada in applied management and hospitality, and he has 2 master's degrees from University of Brisbane. In Brisbane, MBA and masters in hospitality. As the head of tourism promotion division, Damcho, besides your overall day-to-day responsibility to run the logistics, to run the admin and HR, Damcho is he's more engaged in promoting Bhutan to the outside world. He has been as the chief of the division. He has linkages with international media, international and local tourism agencies, and public relation agencies in Bhutan to promote Bhutan. In particular, you have been involved in promoting our brand Bhutan, which sort of highlights the focus of brand Bhutan is to promote our high-end tourism policy. We always say high value, low volume tourism. And then Damcho has been since 2005, after you have finished your graduation and have topped to the RCSC Bhutan Civil Service Examinations under technical category. Damcho has been a researcher. He started his career as a researcher. As a researcher, Damcho was involved in researching our community-based tourism policies, community-based tourism involving remote villages. For instance, in the East Tashigang, we have Merak and Sakting community. Damcho had been involved in research, conducting some research on these 2 communities. And I would, I guess, following your research, these 2 places have been open to tourism. And I can go on and on. Damcho has a very high profile, rich profile. But in the interest of time, I will stop somewhere, and then you will have 15 to 20 minutes. I will give you a indication the moment you hit 15 minutes, and then maybe wrap up in another 2-3 minutes. But we should not extend beyond 20 minutes. Damcho, the Zoom stage is yours.
I'm glad that you stopped to talk about me, because we have to talk about tourism, hydropower, and employment today. Kuzo Zangpo to everyone those who are joining us live. It's my pleasure to speak about tourism. Before I talk about tourism, I want to thank the Center for Local Governance and Research in Bhutan, the team, for having me as part of tourism discussion today. And of course, the Center for Study of Democracy, University of Westminster. We have Dr. Nitasha with us here today. So thank you. And of course, my office for giving me opportunity to participate in this session today. I'll be talking about tourism and of course the impact of COVID-19. How did we react, the recovery plans, challenges, opportunities, and I think the most important is how do we prepare ourselves when I think tourism slowly starts to come in. So that's going to be a summary. That's a summary of what I'll be talking about today. So the impact of tourism, impact of COVID-19 in tourism sector has been this. You can see it on the slide. 2020, over 50,000 people have been impacted by COVID-19, and in terms of visitor arrivals, receipts, and revenue, over 90% impact. So the tourism industry has been impacted hugely. There's been a huge impact on tourism, a negative impact on tourism because of COVID-19. Everybody is aware on this. Now, the question is, how did we respond to this nightmare? What did we do? Were we prepared to have something like that? So how do we respond to this nightmare? Like I said, it's a nightmare for tourism industry. Before we talk about how do we respond, I think it's a fact that we were shocked. We were taken by surprise. A lot of people are stressed. And I must say that still people are shocked and stressed by this COVID-19 pandemic. It's almost been a year now, and still we are shocked because of this pandemic. Then came the blessings, came the light, because we didn't know what to do. Like I said, we were shocked, we were stressed. People are still stressed and shocked. So then came the light, and we had this Gelpos Relief Kidu Fund. It's a welfare initiated by His Majesty the King for those not just affected in tourism, but those affected even outside tourism. And under this Gelpos Relief Kilo Fund, they were paid, I would say, a generous amount of money, monthly amount of money for them to survive, for them to meet their daily expenses. So this was a blessing, and it's a light for us. And also, the other things under His Majesty's command, the interest waiver for some of the loans, soft loans, of course, and then, of course, loan deferment. So it gave us a breathing space, because if we didn't have this, I think our office would be in big trouble, because we're not prepared. We had about 50,000 people, 50,000 plus people, and about 12,000 businesses in tourism impacted overnight, and we really didn't know what to do. And without His Majesty's intervention, I think we would really not have the time to prepare. So uh, then the government started the economic contingency plan. Under the economic contingency plan, we had tourism economic contingency plan, and under this we had under economic contingency plan, we had 4 different areas of how we engage people. We engaged about 1,330 people in 2 phases, starting April this year. So under infrastructure and manufacturing, we had studies and surveys, training and reskilling, and then waste management. So these are the 4 broad categories that we started to engage people under tourism economic contingency plan. Then some of the challenges that we face is, of course, the immediate engagement. This is very short term. Then is the tourism employment. We're talking about 50,000 plus, and the number given even more. So how do we go about, after engaging them for short duration? What is our next step of giving them employment? Do we still keep them in tourism, or do we look for other areas? Is it who takes up this? Is it the private individuals? What can the government do? So this is one challenge. And of course, income. A lot of people were relying on a monthly salary. And when this stopped, I think they had really no other means of starting any activity to generate income. And that impacted their livelihoods. They have families at home. They had, some of them were sole income earners. So this has been a quite huge impact to the livelihood. And of course, you're talking about 12,000 plus businesses directly impacted by tourism. So these are big challenges for tourism, and a lot of questions being asked of how do we go about starting this. And there's still people waiting, and then we start something. We start domestic tourism to actually kickstart some of the economy, and then the first lockdown happens in August, and then now the second lockdown happens in August. And these are some of the challenges that really we have to think about seriously. So what did we learn from this? The shock, the stress, and then a lot of people are being impacted. The primary source of the income is being tourism. So what did we learn? I think it's almost okay to say that I think all the eggs have been put in one basket, or most eggs have been put in one basket. Tourism, if you look at tourism, is actually a sector that cross-cuts all other sectors. Agriculture, you say agriculture, then you have this construction. So it almost looked like, tourism, because of tourism, the rest of these sectors or industry were also impacted hugely, and it most looks like most eggs, if not all eggs, have been put in one basket. And the worst is the eggs of all the tourism individuals have been put in one basket. So there was no diversification, I think. So this has been some of the learnings for us. So we really needed to be resilient. We needed to adapt, and also, of course, to be tough. So this has been a learning. Then, of course, when we have challenges like this, we talk about opportunities. And these are some of the opportunities that we feel. I mean, domestic tourism is big. I think before COVID-19 pandemic, our focus has been international tourism. And now, because there's no international tourism, people started to travel. Not just because of there's no international tourism, I think because you can't go out. So it's been a blessing for us. Pilgrimage-wise, we have so many sacred places in Bhutan, religious, spiritual places in Bhutan. I think up until COVID, we have been exploring other countries. But now it's given an opportunity for our own people to explore within Bhutan. So domestic tourism is a big opportunity for us. Of course, with lockdown, it doesn't help, but it's going to pick up. So the other thing is, this is the time for us to train new people, reskill, upgrade and upscaling, professionalizing. This is an opportunity for us to do that. And of course, enhance the infrastructure, especially some of these very popular places, because there was non-stop flow of tourists numbers. It didn't really give us the space to really take a break and then redo it. But now is an opportunity for us to beautify, make it more enhances, whether it's trekking trails or tourism attractions like Tigers, Taksang, Tiger, popularly known as Tiger's Nest, maybe even Dochula, places like that. I think this is an opportunity for us to enhance our infrastructure. Then digitalization is big. I think just now all these processes, procedures have been put on halt. So is this an opportunity? This is an opportunity for us to digitalize and use the power of digitalization. Then diversification. We're not just talking about these eggs, all eggs in one basket, or most eggs in one basket. This is given as an opportunity for us to diversify. And I know there are people in tourism, they have already started new businesses. So this has given an opportunity, even if they come back to tourism, they have something else, whether it's agriculture, whether it's construction, whether it's as simple as having a local small farm stall. So this is given an opportunity to diversify. And the other thing, I think this is also an opportunity for government to support, maybe NGOs to support, maybe other investors to support on non-tourism investments. Maybe we can look at especially the tourism people who are impacted by COVID-19, give an opportunity for them to invest in non-tourism businesses, so that even if tourism opens and something like this happens in future, then I think we are prepared. So we mandate non-tourism investments. And the other big opportunity is, it's already happening, virtual experience. There are events. I actually recently participated in an event. It was a paid event, online event. So our tour operators here, our tourism partners here could actually start this, a virtual experience. Tourists don't necessarily have to come. I mean, it'll be good to come. It'll be good to have them here because there's a larger economic impact. But if it's done virtually, because they can't come physically, so there is a big opportunity for virtual experience. So these are some of the opportunities that our tourism industries partners can take. But of course, this is not limited to just this, but there can be much more than this. So these are some of the opportunities that we foresee, I personally foresee. Then moving forward, how do we better prepare ourselves? The first one is reopening. The question is now, how do we reopen? Would there be a lot of people when you reopen, or do we open slowly? What are the other countries doing? So how do we prepare ourselves? So when we prepare ourselves, it's not just about opening the gates. I think we have to prepare internally of our manpower, our resources, our attractions. So how do we prepare ourselves for reopening? Is it going to be through digitalization? A lot of people say it's contactless, no physical contact experiences. Then, of course, diversification, as I said earlier. I know recovery in terms of how do we recover. How do we prepare ourselves in terms of diversification? Not everybody at one go can be engaged in tourism and we reopen. So we have to think about that. How long will it take for us to reopen? Then, of course, policy and incentives. What policies, in which areas, in terms of preparing to reopen? The government has opened Samazongkha and Gelifu for entry for tourists. So should we be looking at these areas as well when we open? And if we do, then what are the incentives? What are the policies? Because in these areas, the tourism infrastructure is very minimal. So what are the policy intervention? Should we have guides just for this region, and they can't come to central Bhutan? This could actually address rural to urban migration. So policy and incentives like that, this is an opportunity for us. And of course, we are looking at access as a big challenge for us. Being the only international airport in Paro, everybody flying, they will have to come to Paro. Is there any other way of addressing this? And then people having to go to east, I think with limited domestic air transport, they mostly have to travel by road. Is there a solution for this? Can we talk about this? So this is also how probably we just not prepare for opening. And then partnership and collaboration. I think, how do we go about working on this? What are the opportunities here? How do we prepare in this? of many years of us being busy, last couple of the years, almost a decade, we have been very busy with tourism. Probably some of us didn't have really good time to collectively decide, collectively think of tourism solutions. But this is an opportunity for us to partner and collaborate between and amongst each other. Now, the last but not the least, of course, Brand Bhutan. Where does this Brand Bhutan stand in terms of preparing for us to open? When you talk about employment, and we have a lot of people employed, when we talk about tourism numbers, when we talk about the scale of tourism, where does this Brand Bhutan fit? How do we ensure that the high value, low volume tourism is actually well protected and well promoted? When you talk about reopening, there's urgency of having tourism to be open. There's an urgency of having to look after 12,000 plus businesses. So this is something that we have to think about when you prepare to open. But like I said, domestic tourism is one of the solutions for now when the borders open. The Tourism Council of Bhutan has initiated, just launched something called Hydropower. And this is where I think the partners can come in and support. This is a platform where people can look at what can they do in terms of going within Bhutan, and people who are promoting and engaging in domestic tourism can put their packages, submit their packages here. So this is a simple, probably a solution to connect people and slowly bring a small impact, and then in future can bring a bigger impact for Bhutan. So something like that. Then in conclusion, I think 50,000 plus, 50,737 people impacted by COVID-19 in 2020. Only I think a few have been still been employed. We're very grateful to those who are still continuing to employ some of our colleagues in tourism. But 50,000 plus people impacted. 159,000 3-star and plus. And we're talking about 600 other non-star hotels being impacted. A total of 12,802 businesses impacted in tourism. They're all waiting for tourism to open. But on the other side of the fence, we must all understand that tourism is only going to open slowly. The numbers are going to be only small. The numbers may not be able to address the other side of the fence number, 50,000 plus, 159 hotels, which is included in total 12,800 businesses being impacted. It's only going to be a niche tourism, because travelers would really be concerned about safety and health when they travel, not just in the destinations, but while they travel during transit. The neighboring countries' health protocol will impact our countries, because they will have to transit to different countries. So the travel is going to be very niche. And the other thing we must remember is it's going to be contactless. Where there's entry, they will probably require contactless entry, contactless travel. But tourism is heavy human touch, and more so for Bhutan. And then, of course, there's going to be a digital shift, like I said, in virtual experience. So you look at both sides of the fence. Bhutan tourism industry of Bhutan, we have had a lot of people impacted. Some of them are still waiting for tourism to open. They really probably have no solution of what should they be doing. And then, of course, a lot of business impacted. Loans getting defaulted. People here, the business owners have to pay the employees, the overheads. On the other side of the fence, from our learning and from our engagement, tourism is looking very slow. The number is going to be smaller to begin with. We never know. Some people are saying 4 to 5 years. Some of us saying 1 to 2 years for tourism to start. But it's all guessing, is guesstimate. People call it is a guessing game. But I think it has to start us thinking. So this, in conclusion, I think we really have to take this in perspective when we try and move forward. When you talk about employment, when you talk about businesses, reviving of businesses, when we talk about reviving of tourism. So this, I want to actually conclude that we have to consider both sides of the fence. And of course, I want to end that the tourism industry is very grateful to His Majesty the King for bringing in the lights. Of course, when we need it, of course, as always, we look up to the leadership and selfless. And some of our friends tell me that it makes, when His Majesty is working so hard, it makes them feel guilty of even to take part in this Kidu relief fund, which is actually a good solidarity coming as one, as unity. And we just want to be grateful on behalf of Tourism Council, tourism industry of Bhutan. So with this, I want to thank once again the organizers of giving us an opportunity to summarize the impact of COVID-19 and some of the questions that we've been asking, the industry have been asking, and of course, not having a clear future of how it might open for Bhutan. So thank you.
Thank you, Damcho, for your very insightful, informative presentation. Let's do like this. We'll finish all our 3 speakers, and then later towards the end, we'll have Q&A session for all of us, wherein even the panelists can ask our doubts and questions against each other. And then also we'll take in questions from the virtual audience. We get so many feedbacks, both through our Facebook, which is live, and then through this Zoom. So towards the end, we will have all these discussions. Let us go to a second speaker. Tashi, are you online?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Tashi. Tashi is our second panelist for this session. She is an assignment editor from Queensland Corporation Limited. Tashi has a master's degree in international journalism from University of Western Australia down in Perth. And Tashi also has a postgraduate diploma in print journalism from Asian College of Journalism in India. Tashi has been in this job for the last 15 years. During the last 15 years, she has been immensely, she was intensely involved in bringing issues from the rural aspects, from the rural Bhutan. Our people have been, grappling with how stories has touched all these rural lives. She has been to so many rural places, and she has won quite a few awards also. Very interesting stories on how our cultural change has impacted our rural Bhutan. For instance, one of our stories was on our cultural practice of night hunting, which is a traditional courting practice. She did such stories, and then she was awarded for this. She was given the Best Feature Story Award in 2009, and then later in 2017, you also won your second award, Bhutan's Women and Children Award in 2017. I should say Tashi is one of those few female reporters. Thank you so much for your passion in your profession. You have been really balancing well between your work and your motherhood. You have to take care of a home. A while ago, she had been out of the scene to feed her baby, and now she's on here. For the last 15 years, you have managed this, and we look forward to your continued contribution to this profession. And today, as a reporter, what I and the audience would expect is, I'm sure you will have your own observations. You and I are not in the policy-making place. We cannot really recommend or suggest anything, but as an observer, as citizens, as concerned citizens, more than me, you are more effective actually, because you work in the print media. So we look forward to hearing from you, your observation on the challenges posed by COVID-19. Of course, with challenges, so many opportunities are there. Where are the loopholes? Where are the areas, gaps we need to fill up? So with all these expectations, we look forward to your presentation. Tashi, now Zoom stage is yours for another 15 minutes. I'm sorry.
Firstly, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Tashi Jigme, for the introduction. I wanted to share my presentation, but I think I couldn't manage it, so I think I'll leave it there. Firstly, I would want to thank the Center for Local Governance and Research for giving me this opportunity. And I hope that my input would help the center and also the Center for Study of Democracy in Westminster University in UK understand Bhutan's experiences of the pandemic better. With all the former speakers in the last 2 days, elaborating on the impact of the pandemic in the country, and with Damcho as a tourism expert, talking enough on tourism, I think I'll focus mine on the pandemic's impact on unemployment and also on hydropower, purely from a journalistic lens, like Tashi Jigme mentioned. I will have to admit that I'm not an expert, and like Tashi Jigme mentioned, I'm not in any position to make any policy or decisions. So the views I share here, the opinions I share here are purely based on my observation. So going to the impact, I think the COVID-19 pandemic had hit Bhutan's highest employment sector, the tourism and hospitality sector, very hard, impacting lots of people directly or indirectly. It has crippled our economy and thereby resulted in layoffs, leave without salary. And for those who are still hanging on, I think there was salary reductions. So the pandemic has worsened the unemployment scenario in the country, and the unemployment rate for 2020 is projected to be around 14%, an increase from 2.7% in 2019. The unemployment issue, I think, it was aggravated with many Bhutanese returning home from overseas. We already have a lot of layoffs here, and the pandemic hitting. The highest tourism, the highest employment sector, tourism and hospitality, but we also have many people who returned home. Damcho's presentation mentioned that there are more than 50,000 people affected by the pandemic in tourism sector alone, but we do have more people in hospitality and entertainment sector, like people who work in more than 665 budget or non-certified hotel, as they call it, around 4,200 restaurants and cafes in the country. In addition, there are numerous people who were working in dryungs, handicraft shops, water services, rafting and trekking companies, and small businesses. So everyone was affected. But as much as the global pandemic had left many jobless, it also exposed how dependent we are on foreign workers. We have seen shortage of labor in hydropower constructions and other construction works, as many non-Bhutanese left home. That's why I think we have many constructions incomplete right now. The pandemic also revealed that there was shortage of manpower, like shortage of more than 14,000 foreign workers, and including more than 7,000 skilled workers in the construction sector due to the restrictions imposed in response to COVID-19. So because of this shortage of workers and import of materials, it caused delays in completion of, besides the construction, so I think more importantly on our hydropower constructions, the works are impacted, and then which are, especially on Pinasanshu 1 and 2, which are already behind schedule, and I think it is going to affect it will affect the economy badly. Then the COVID also, I think, revealed that the mismatch, there are like mismatch of jobs available and our job seekers, the graduates we produce, be it class 10, 12, or university graduates, and the jobs available. So basically, it boils down to our education system. So the pandemic exposed what kind of skills we lack. The construction sector is short of masons, carpenters, steel fabricators, plumbers, electricians, building painters, operators, and rod binders. We have never, but we know that we have been talking of these things for so long. These issues are not new, but we have never been able to resolve it. And we never managed to replace the foreign workers, and we never managed to create our own pool of skilled workers. So the pandemic mandated, in any way, pandemic mandated us to address it. And in all this, I think we understand that the pandemic impact, it is deep, widespread, and cross-cutting. It increased our vulnerability, exposed our lack of food, economic and social security schemes, and it also revealed how our coping capacity is very limited. So what did we do in response? Like the immediate response, I think, was that many of those who were affected got into agriculture. So some moved back to the villages. We have our dayang dancers who took up construction works, our Thomdis employing them in beautification works, our tour guides becoming wage earners, and like Damcho said, but in all this, I think these were all short-term relief, Ani, but like Damcho said, I think it is Truk Gelpo's relief kidu that helped many. The relief kidu not only helped people working in tourism and hospitality sector, but those in small restaurant and truck drivers, taxi drivers. Basically, it helped people who suffered loss of jobs and income. So I think this forum, let us also take this opportunity to, in this forum, let us also take this opportunity to thank His Majesty for being our savior in these difficult times, and also in all times to come. Damcho already mentioned on when we talk of response in the tourism sector, Damcho already mentioned, but in agriculture sector, we have agriculture stimulus plan with a budget of 944 million. So, we in the morning, we had our morning session panels discussing a lot about the responses in agriculture. In the construction and we have this Build Bhutangi project, which is initiated to help the unemployed, laid off employees and also returnees from overseas and address the gap in the construction sector. Nalu. The project was aimed to train job seekers, reskill them or improve their skills. It was initiated to match the demand for workers in the construction sector with the supply of workers. So it will mobilize, create, manage a pool of skilled and unskilled workforce to meet the requirements in the sector. Then in hydropower, in order to address the shortage of non-skilled key manpower, many people took up the job. Then we have this, this government has been focusing on vocational education, and the pandemic, I think, helped it take forward. So these programs would upscale the skills of our children to match the job market. The brighter side of the pandemic response, I think, like Damsho mentioned, is that while we do not have international tourists visiting the country, local tourism became very popular. So we have a lot of people visiting our holy sites, lakes, mountains, and many places which were not popular before have now become local tourist hotspots. So going to the lessons, I think, are all the lessons going on well? But that the answer is definite no. We don't know how much of the agriculture stimulus plan budget has been spent, and we also don't know how our people who are impacted by the pandemic are benefiting from the budget. People who went back to to agriculture. So our urban agriculture program taken up by those impacted by the pandemic, it has failed, and there is need for immediate intervention if it has to succeed. Then the number of people who took up jobs in hydropower construction and through the Build Bhutangi project are very limited. To make matters worse, I think some of people employed in hydropower already left their job. They cited family, work nature, and adaptability as the reason. And some employed through the Build Bhutan project have also left the job, and they cited the low wages as the reason. So the government said that they would increase the wages, but we don't know when. Then, but the real irony is that when we have shortage of manpower here, we have many people who were brought in, who returned home because of the COVID, because of the pandemic, but again, they returned to overseas to continue working at their own risks. So it definitely calls for reform in our wage system and working wage incentive and working system, because when we ask these people why they want to go back, I think the immediate reason is high salary, then higher salaries, and also the working environment and working system. So on the positive side, despite the shortage of the manpower, I think in hydropower construction again, the pandemic revealed that our hydropower could generate undisrupted revenue during such crisis. It will be a different story if it's a climate crisis, but in health crisis like this, hydropower has been a boon. So the country could have benefited if Puna Zanshu 1 and 2 are completed on schedule. It has become evident that we have to prioritize on one hydropower construction at a time. And also there's a need to ensure its completion before embarking on another. But we need to think the hydropower cliche. Tamchu used this, putting all eggs in one basket in tourism, as an example in tourism, but we already have this cliche saying that, okay, in hydropower, we are putting all eggs in one basket. I think as long as we are mindful of the climate crisis, and as long as we ensure that, okay, we bite what we chew, I think the government could tap on hydropower potentials. Then the way forward, I think the pandemic has made one thing clear, that the tourism industry must be resilient and sustainable in the face of future health and climate crisis. And like Damcho said, those in the sector needs to diversify. And our tourism policies should also gear towards it. Then we need to invest in agriculture and encourage our people who return to the farms, who return to agriculture, who return to the rural areas to continue working. It might not succeed, it might not go well at once, but as long as the government invest and as long as people put in effort, I think it will help in food sector, in producing food, and it will help address food security programs, Nalu. Then our agriculture stimulus plan is focused just on increasing the production, but I think it should focus on processing, packaging, storing, and marketing. We have the FCBLCO in the morning. We have had the FCBLCO saying that, okay, there is market, but I think it's very important to establish the linkage between the market and where the farm produces are grown. From the villages, we have many villages who need to sell their products, but they don't have the right market. So it's very important to establish that linkages. Then we need, I think, Tashi Jimmy is again and again looking at the time. So I think I'm almost come to the last few points. We need, I think, survival mechanism for businesses that provide employment to people and ensure social protection schemes like employment schemes for employment security schemes for those in the private sector. We have the labor law that requires the organizations or agencies to have pension schemes, but the pandemic, it reveals that it was not, the law was there, just there on paper, and it was never implemented in reality. So, and we also have to create, I think, awareness to encourage people to save. But this could only be done if we have, I think, multiple income source. With most of us depending on just dry salary, as we call it, I think saving will be very difficult. And so in most offices, policies discourage people from doing other works. So I think we need to rethink that policy and also that law. And I think we should have a system where I think people should be allowed to do multiple jobs as long as they do it. Like in Australia, we can do multiple jobs at a time. So like that, I think we should be allowed to do that. I think that's the way forward. If you want our people to save and have a secure future, I think that's the only way forward. And lastly, I think it's very important for us as Bhutanese to all the people in the decision making, people in the bureaucracy, people like private sector, in media, everyone. I think it's very important for us to implement all the wonderful plans and policies we have in paper, and I think we have to rethink and rework on policies and plans that are not working to ensure that, okay, this is the way forward. Nalu, I think that's it. And in these difficult times, I think I can only end by requesting everyone to stay indoors and extend help to those who are affected by the lockdown and also the pandemic. Thank you, and Tashi Dele.
Thank you, Tashi. Thank you for bringing out so many issues upfront. It's very encouraging to see so many queries coming from our virtual audience. We'll have enough time, I suppose, at the end to discuss all these issues brought by all our speakers. Without further ado, let me welcome our third speaker, Honorable Dr. Tempa Doji, Honorable National Council member from Lunche Zongkak. Honorable Tempa Doji is serving his second term in National Council. He is currently Deputy Chair of Legislative Committee. He has a Master's of Science degree in Electrical Power Engineering from NTNU, Norway. Prior to his joining in Parliament in 2013, he worked in Bhutan Power Corporation Limited for more than 20 years in various capacities. He comes from a very technical background, although he's a legislator, but he is equally a technocrat. I remember we worked together when I was in Parliament. He was a part of several standing committees as well as special committees. For instance, we worked together in special committee on hydropower, special committee on education, and this year Dasho was involved in, I guess, in study on Tibet issues in Bhutan. With your rich experience in both policy making as well as from the technical aspect, We look forward to hearing from you, Dr. Tempa. Please take us through for another 15 minutes on the impact from COVID-19 on employment, tourism, and hydropower. Honorable Tempa, stage is yours.
Kuzambo, and good afternoon.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for having me here. It's a great opportunity, but I'm not sure whether I'll be able to do the justice for granting me to be one of the panelists on employment in hydropower and tourism. Basically, what I thought was like, if I talk specifically on hydropower, then I thought like it should be a specific sector specialist talking on this subject. Therefore, what I'll be going through is like I'll be basically talking upon what is the future for an employment in Bhutan as of now, because during such situations, what I have as a topic is technical and vocational education training and its employability. Because basically when we talk of employment, I think we are talking all about the skills that is required in the market. Firstly, I'll basically brief on the statistics of this employment, and secondly, I'll be talking something about the legislations and the programs and the policies that we have reviewed. And thirdly, I'll be briefly touching upon the adverse impact of COVID on employment and opportunities that given to us as an ANILA. And lastly, I'll be talking something about the way forward issues as a legislator, what we have discussed and what we have come to a conclusion upon. So therefore, first I'll talk briefly about its employment issue. I think employment, when we talk about employment, it's a growing concern, not only in Bhutan, throughout the world, but at large. Therefore, I think it's the hope and aspiration of every parents to have your kids employed after educating well. And I think when we talk about this employment or an unemployment issue, it's a very complex issue, I would say. And in Bhutan, is the responsibility of the government, as enshrined in every legislation that we have, that employment has to be created and has to be given an opportunity, and the environment we should make a conducive environment for every one of us to get employed and sustain our life. Therefore, I think unemployment situation in Bhutan has emerged from 1990s. I think it started at the rate of 1.4% with an upward trend at 2.7% in 2019, and is further projected to be going above 4% by 2021. Therefore, I think in this, the one unique feature that we need to keep in our mind is a youth unemployment. The youth unemployment rate from age group of 15 to 24 stood at 11.9% in 2019. And unemployment rate for middle and higher cohort, education cohort, as reported as to be as high as 21.3% as of in 2016. Therefore, I think one thing I want to clarify out here is the employment rate for bachelor's degree. What we see out here is around 60.94%. And from this perspective, what we saw or what we recorded is the employment opportunities for Tibet graduates are higher than the general graduates. As far as we are concerned, what we have observed. And the employment rate for Tibet graduates as of 2018 is almost 88%. I think that's a good sign for Tibet to come in such situation. And one thing, what we have also observed from this perspective is, I think a few numbers of graduates have even joined the Tibet in order to acquire the skills and knowledge in order to get themselves employed. I think this is a good sign that we have as of now. Especially when we talk about employment, as a legislator, as a policymaker, what we need to keep in mind is, at the end of it, we basically we refer to these acts and policies in place. The importance of job creation has been explicitly expressed in the Constitution and in the employment acts and policies. Therefore, I think guided by all those broad-based objectives, I think as a House of Review, as a National Council member, we have reviewed so many policies and programs in order to generate or in order to enhance the skilling and the reskilling of these present generations. Firstly, what we have, I think we have reviewed on a national employment policy and programs. And we have also reviewed this tourism policy, actually. And the quality of education, when we are talking about the quality of education, one major observation that we have made is, I think at this juncture, what we are educating the students only for the examinations, not for their living. I think that's the way where we're going. As I think my co-panelist has already mentioned, in education system, what we have in the system, what we have at this juncture is, I think we are trying to educate, not trying to educate for their living. We are trying to educate to pass their examination. That's the crux where we need to assess and see what we could do in future and move forward. I think we have also reviewed on hydropower policies and programs in Bhutan. In hydropower policy and programs, we may argue and say that we are trying to put all the baskets in one area. But on the other hand, whether we have pandemic or non-pandemic, what we need for a country is the revenue. I think at this juncture, what we are trying to say is hydropower gives us revenue. During pandemic situation, what we have come to learn is I think as a Bhutanese, we have an educated manpower at the back of it. It's not that we are shortage of manpower. As per the 12 5-year plan, what they have shown is we'll be having at the end of 12 5-year plan around 70,000 plus job seekers in the market. That shows that we have the manpower, but do we have the required skills to employ them in the construction sectors, whether it is hydro or non-hydro. During hydropower development policy and programs review, what we have observed is, I think there's no actually transfer of knowledge and technology to a Buddhist counterpart. It's exactly carried out by our foreign experts. Therefore, I think from that, we need to relook and then re-strategize what we could do after this post-pandemic. During these post-pandemic situations, what we have learned, what we have observed is basically I think like there's the progress of the construction has been halted, but nevertheless, the Buddhist per se employment has not been affected much in the construction sector, because the numbers of Buddhists employed, all of those in this construction sector, has been negligible. I think where we can relook in all those issues and find a way out, and then I think it's time for us to see beyond. Then we have also reviewed agriculture policy, and we have seen that 43% of the youth has been employed in agriculture. However, we made that agriculture conditions to this youth very enabling? I think no. I think there's a gap between this also. So I think I'll exactly discuss what I would like to say in my way forward. Then we have also reviewed technical vocational education and trainings. What's the gap between these two? Whether we can skill the Buddhist counterpart or the Buddhist youth out here in this Anila. Then after reviewing all those, we have so many observations, but I think what we need to concentrate at this juncture is especially the pandemic situations has to be considered at this Anila. As I mentioned below earlier, I think around 43.3% of the youth employment or the youths are engaged in farming. However, the contribution to GDP has been minimal as far as we are concerned. And I think the second is followed up by service sectors. I think we have good numbers of people employed in service sectors too. But with this pandemic, we know that all those, especially in the service sector, especially in tourism and the entertainment sector, it has been badly affected. However, I think the tourism sector has come up with this local tourism, especially to visits like pilgrimages and sacred sites. Are we creating enough opportunities? I think that's where we need to debate and then find a way forward. Not only this pandemic has not only given us an Anila, we had an adverse impact. On the other hand, we should look at what are the things that we could carry out forward and what we could do. And then like, I think we can recommend to the government for a way forward. On those fronts, I think like, I think our youths, why our youths are not, I think we should also see and look at the issues between the why the preference of jobs by the youth, especially between white collar jobs versus the blue collar job. I think in this regard, we need to look, revisit the policies that we have in place, especially in technical vocational education trainings. Because why people are not trying to join on those, especially the Tibet part, It's not that they don't want to work in the field, but I think is number one is their career progression is quite limited. Second thing, I think their image as a Tibet graduate is quite limited, because what we are trying to do is when we bring in the foreign expertise, we never look at their certificate. What we are doing with the Buddhist part is, are Buddhists capable of doing what they are certified even? I think that's the gap that we are trying to create. I think we need to narrow these two gaps and then find a way out for our youth to be employed and skilled. We have a big issue, especially the impact of COVID in construction sectors. Yes, there's a halt in the progress of the work, but the employment scenarios, the employment issues for a Buddhist was negligible. And second part, we need to keep in our mind is national development activities. As I think our moderator has already mentioned, the capital outlay for the fiscal year was 36.2 billion, whereas we have just spent around 7 billion. That shows that are we not capable of handling all those, or we are not trying to educate the people working on this, because there's a huge gap. All those development activities come to a halt, not because that there are non-availability of materials. It's all about the non-availability of laborers and the skilled laborers, in fact. Therefore, I think we have lots of challenges, but how do we overcome this? I think the Tibet is only the way out that we should come. We should work on this. Then I think post-COVID, we had lots of opportunities after this now. Number one, I think what we have, the plans and programs that we have in 12 5-year plan has to be re-strategized, and they have to remap it. The resources has to be reallocated in whatever way that we could to handle it. And one thing what we have observed from this pandemic situation is we have good numbers of manpowers in our hand, at our disposal. Are they ready to work, or are they skilled enough to handle the job? Because we have good numbers of people coming back from third countries to our country during such situation. Why they are coming back? What's the reason behind? What's the job they were carrying out? I think we need to ponder over this and then find out a way out and find a solution for this. Buddhist, I don't think the Buddhist youth are incapable of handling all those, but I think, are they skilled enough? Have we skilled them to carry out the job? I think that's the gap that we, that's the gap. One opportunity, what we have observed during this pandemic situation, the availability of great opportunity are for those technically and occasionally skilled individuals. Because as per the states that we have, especially the graduates from Tibet has been employed, almost 90%. I think that's a good sign. Therefore, at this juncture, if we have to reduce the effect from such pandemic in future, and then we should relook where we are heading for, how can we pin? I think all those has to be clearly drafted and outlined. If we can do this, I think the employment issues is not a big concern. I think lastly, I'll go through my, I think what we have observed, and I think what I would like to lay out as a way forward. My way forward on after this pandemic situations, after all those situations, what I would like to say is, first and foremost, what we need is food self-sufficiency and food self-reliance is my priority as an individual, as my adela. I think it's time for us to recognize agriculture sector as one with great potential for generating, number one, an employment and achieve food self-sufficiency, and at last we should try to achieve this food self-reliance. If not, I think we may say whatever it is, but on the other hand, I think these are the two critical issues that we need to ponder upon. I think there's a way out to generate employment. If you, as my co-panelist has already mentioned about value chain system, if those are created, I think our youths are ready to jump in. At this critical junction, what I have observed is good numbers of people from tourism and entertainment sectors has already joined agriculture sector. Therefore, I think this is a way out to be engaged for people in this sector in order to sustain ourselves. And second thing, what I would like to recommend or show, recommend out here is, I think, why are we recognizing hydropower as one of the ANILA? Because whether it is pandemic or non-pandemic, revenue is number one. I think country, if we don't earn revenue, for revenue purpose, hydropower is necessity. We may call it, why we say hydropower is very important. Number one, in hydropower sectors, we could engage actually good numbers of people. Actually, when we are carrying these 3 mega projects construction, we have just engaged around 20% of Bhutanese and 80% of labor third country. Therefore, we must re-strategize and say to ourselves, in order to generate revenue and employment, hydropower is necessary. And therefore, I think we need also or the youth to be employed in such construction sector by granting incentives or subsidies in the order to use more homegrown skilled manpower rather than using third country people. And then in such situation, we are trying to invite all our Bhutanese people back to our country, creating more employment issues. I think these two would be two critical issues or concerns that we need to take it up. And thirdly, what I thought was I think when you look at all the statistics for the past few years, we found that almost all the Tibet graduates are observed actually in one company or the other, whether it's in the corporate body or in the government body, government offices, or in private offices. Therefore, I think recognizing Tibetan vocational education as the repository of skilled human resources that would shape the future patterns of our employment and its issues in terms of both quality and quantity. I think that should be the way out as far as I'm concerned. Lastly, what I felt is, as my co-panelists, both my co-panelists has mentioned regarding the employment issues and their skills, I think it's time for us to re-strategize, replan. I think it's time for us to enhance their skills. And then I think we need to reskill them now. And then we need to de-skill them in as per the program based on the assessments of the markets. I think it's time for us to do this. Lastly, I think this is my last one. I would like to say that I think most of the Tibet experts articulate if education is the key to effective development strategies, then Tibet is the master key to elevate poverty and to help to achieve sustainable development. I think I would like to say that it's time for us to revamp the system. I think we need to have a paradigm shift in our thought process in order to create job market in future, both in terms of, I would say, construction sector, both hydro and non-hydro. That's a big scope. I think on tourism front, I support what our co-panelist has already talked about, but we need to relook at all those stages and see how can we improve in such situation? How can we create market in such situation? As my co-panelist, the earlier panelist has already pointed out in terms of hydropower, I think we need to skill our manpower. If we are not able to skill, then is it enough by bringing all those people from outside and create job employment out here? I think in order to create way forward, we need to relook at all those issues, plans, and programs. So I think I would like to end my presentation out here for now. And thanks, Nitila, moderator, and I think it's such an honor to be here. And then I think I had a very good learning experience. I'm doing it for the first time online. So much. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Tempa, for your very elaborate, informative, insightful presentations, actually. Thank you to all my three esteemed panelists here. We have three of you have really reminded, more than pointing, more than really telling them some new things, reminded us what we have been really, going through for the several years, in fact, decades. Our unemployment issue discussion had taken place since 1990s, as per Dr. Tempa's presentation here, and then we were still grappling with this. How do we do this? And then all these are really echoed by our virtual participants here. It's very overwhelming questions here. I will try to make it sequential so that we get to these questions as far as possible, as many as possible. To start with Damchu's presentation on tourism, it's really attracting a lot of questions, a lot of opinions virtually. You touched upon the all eggs in one basket at a national level, one might tend to think that our economy is more focused on tourism and hydropower. Others are sort of neglected. And on other hand, Dr. Tempers and Tashi's presentation sort of try to also equal consideration to other sectors as well, which we are neglecting. We should bring on board. And coming to tourism in particular, within the tourism sector itself, I understood that you are saying that we even within the tourism sector, all eggs are in one basket. I personally understand that we have broadly, the moment you talk about tourism activities, is either cultural tour or trekking. I mean, conventionally, there could be many new. As a listener here, participant here, I would want to ask you, beyond these two areas of trekking and cultural tour, of course, domestic tourism is picking up. What are the other diversifications tourism TCB has started? And then, of course, based on your answer, then we will continue on other questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I was following the questions online, and I'm happy that you see a lot of questions, which means that I think we've asked quite a few questions, and then I've also got people thinking. I think this has been, I must say, tourism is a very touchy subject. It touches the lives of many people. I think sometimes when we ask different questions, I think we tend to touch the sentiments of people. But more, nevertheless, I think what's important for us is to move forward as one industry. So getting back to, I have a few things that I want to add at the end, but immediately to go back to your question about moving away from culture and trekking. What is TCB doing? What is the tourism industry doing? One of the good news I want to share, of course, probably you must have seen in the media, is the adoption of tourism policy of Kingdom of Bhutan. So it's just pending endorsement from the cabinet. It's approved in principle. So this has a lot of elements that could actually sort of a few things. One is the product diversification. It talks about wellness tourism. It talks about medical tourism. It talks about MICE tourism, meetings, incentive, convention, exhibition. It talks about agro-tourism. So the focus now with the written document, it probably move away from what we have been trying to do for so many years, of move away just from the culture. Trekking, not so much, Mr. Moderator. I think this is also one of the challenges. Many years ago, I think because the government wanted to encourage people to come in trekking, they had lower minimum daily package rate for trekking, but it didn't really work. So now with policy in place, I think it's going to help us. It'll give us more strong reasons for us to actually diversify in other areas, like I said, agro-tourism, MICE, wellness. And with COVID-19, like I mentioned earlier, the niche tourism is going to be very important. People may not want to come in mass now. It's not safe to come in mass. So wellness, health tourism, personal health is quite important for them. So this is where TCB has been doing a lot of work in ensuring that we adapt to the current situation of COVID. Mr. Moderator, if I may, I want to actually answer one or two questions from what I've seen online. Is it okay if I do that? Okay, so one is on digitalization. I think Mr. Kamalode asked on processes, procedure. I touched briefly earlier. The Tourism Council of Bhutan, in collaboration supported by United Nations Development Program, UNDP in Bhutan, is working on an overall digitalization. And one of the things we would have is something called TCB Hub. So this is moving beyond the current digitalized systems. So thinking from the perspective of trying to book a trip to coming to Bhutan and then leaving Bhutan, what are the areas that we really have to digitize? So that's a solution for, that's what we're working at the moment as an opportunity during COVID-19. So that's I want to share with the audience. The other thing is, of course, seasonality. What are we doing to address the seasonality? And this has been a very long-standing challenge for tourism industry of Bhutan. The very reason that we have lower minimum daily package rate for summer and winter is to actually an effort to do away the summer and the winter, the low season. But is it working? Sometimes it's difficult to promote a country as a year-round destination when you have actually a low price for a low season. So we may have to look at one price for the whole year. This may work. So something like that. The other issue is, of course, the activities and the programs. Some of the popular festivals per se coincides with high seasons. So what are we doing in terms of promoting the low season festival? So some of the festival initiate like the Ha Summer Festival, the other activities happening during the low season, actually an effort to do away with the seasonality. Again, it's very strongly reflected in our tourism policy. And then the domestic travel, I think TCB is has a plan to provide incentive for people to travel to different places. Of course, with the lockdown and of course COVID-19 protocols, it's a bit challenging. But we want to make sure that people actually go to different places, especially tourism deficient areas, places where tourists don't normally go, places where there's no huge impact to tourism. What can the government do in terms of bringing positive impact, even in terms of monetary incentive to go and go to these places and have as a tourist to bring positive impact to the communities. The other two things I want to stress again, maybe for the people who join late, is the future is looking virtual. So innovation in the areas of virtual tourism is very, very important. And when I say virtual tourism, people might think that it's going to be for free, but you can have paid online experiences for tourists that our tourism partners can already work on. The other last point I want to make is diversifying in non-tourism activities to supplement your tourism. You can have other activities supplement your activities. So a situation like this, I think they could focus on something else, non-tourism. So it's, if the government is looking at providing incentive to invest in, like in some other countries, invest in activities, non-tourism activities, and interests being taken up by private sector. So these are some of the things I want to mention as you gave me an opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Damju. Tashi has spoken on length, actually, touching on the labor, our perspective towards our blue-collar job, 7,000 plus skilled labor shortage, and so on and so forth. And you also touched upon, I understood you placed some importance on the hydropower sector, no matter, notwithstanding that it's getting blamed as all eggs in one basket, because this is one sector where whether there is COVID or no COVID, you get consistent return of inflow of revenue from there. I would want to ask Tashi, as a reporter, as an observer, that like Dr. Tempo mentioned, that we have this different mentality. Domestic workers vis-a-vis the foreign expert workers tend to think that foreign experts are always better than the domestic. For instance, starting from mason or carpenter or electrician, if you want to deploy your Bhutanese, we tend to ask their certificates. On the other hand, certificates are not really required if you have foreign expats. So what is your take on this, as a private observer, you and me from the same side?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think that first thing, when we talk of this blue-collar job, skilled job in what we call, in other countries it's referred to as skilled jobs. Here we call them as blue-collar job. I think when we talk of them, I think it's not the end. Like Dasha Tempa and you were like hinting, it's not, I don't think it's the, here, while we are trying to say that, okay, our youth are not taking up blue collar job, I think that's my personal take, because I feel that when we talk to parents, I think we are not encouraging our youth to take up skilled jobs in Nepal, because we think that, okay, that job, most of us as parents want our children to graduate, maybe, okay, be it any general studies, but not take up this kind of skilled key jobs. Nalu. So, and similarly, even in the villages, like if our children want to come back and work in the farms, I think the parents do not encourage that. That's the main problem. Then we say that, okay, this or even after studying class 12, you want to study, come back and work in the farm, and then the attitude is like, okay, do you want to go and then do this kind of job? I've been trying to inculcate some of this sense in my own family, and then a lot of them think that, you're taking up this kind of job, like be it in hospitality, be in this simple things like mobile repair, Nalu, and be it like simple washing machine repair, all these things. I think these skills are important, but then a lot of us do not accept that, and so that's why, because when the whole society itself does not have give a positive look on the job, the youth, they are definitely then for them, they feel that, okay, I should not take this job. So instead of blaming the youth for not taking up the job, I think from the government wise, I think we can incentivize those into this by giving, I think the TVET is geared towards it, but we need to, I think if there is any policies, we can pay this, those taking up the vocational education, their stipend could be little, if their stipend could be better than little bit more than others. And from the, as a society, from parents, as family members, as friends, if we can encourage our youth to take up this kind of job, I think the future for this vocational and the blue collar job, as we say, as we term, I think refer to it, I think it will change. But otherwise, as long as parents and as friends, as society, if we don't give any positive side, positive spin towards it, I don't think the youth will take it. That's my take. I think like you were mentioning, I think Tasho, when our attitude, our Bhutanese attitude over we feel that okay, expat workers as superiority of expat workers of compared to our own workers. So even in hydropower, even in if we skill them, I think we can do it. But as long as if you don't give them the skills, any skills, then just terming them that okay, they are not capable or they are not good enough, I don't think it will work. So I think as a society, and I think it has to it has to be there. I think that's the take.
Thank you, Tasha. Yeah, it's true. We have to get multiple opinions on this. Firstly, starting from the mentality towards this blue collar job, and forget blue collar job, let alone interesting our own domestic players there. People have certain skepticism, apprehension whether our domestic colleague can do it or not, as opposed to a foreign expat. I think in this regard, good thing is let's hope for the best. We already have Build Bhutan project, which is a major part of national contingency plan. In there, if you see, I'm sure all of us would have seen Build Bhutan project, where there are various supports to be coming forward from the government side, starting from wage top up. People are saying, oh, how can you expect a youth to work in such a harsh condition at a very low, nominally low wage, like 400 per day, and getting 3,000 to 4,000 in a month is very difficult to survive. So government has in the Build Bhutan project has various things like wage to our local youth, our youth, and then securing their future, PF, and then creating all these mechanized working conditions, not to really work under severe weather conditions with and then also to provide the latest equipment and all these things. So I think I personally see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel if we are going to implement this Build Bhutan project as it is in the paper form. I mean, we get so many virtual responses here. We keep talking and talking and nothing has been done. Hopefully, I wish that our Build Bhutan project and then contingency plan also do not take their turn. Well, we will talk on this and the next questions. Let me come to our Honorable Tempa. Dr. Tempa, you mentioned very subtly, but it's a significant, I took it very significantly, the education, the quality, the people, our youth, our students study, go to school and college to pass exams, not to really prepare for their life. I remember when I was in council, we were in the same committee. We were in the education review committee. We worked on, and we submitted a report. If you can enlighten us on updates from the National Council's perspective, rather from the Education Ministry, from the overall system perspective, what has been the latest update on this, on improving our education system? His Majesty's address touched on that very much. All of us are aware that we need this. We need to suggest some reform, revive, overhaul the education system. But what is that we want to do? If we continue with the present system, we'll produce so many graduates, but at the end of the 15th or 16th year of the education, they'll end up jobless. So what is the update from your from National Council and from the policy making side?
Firstly, I'll complement what my co-panelists have already stated, especially in terms of youth employment in blue-collar jobs. Because I think one reason what we found out was the wage rate. Because mostly our Buddhist employers consider the Indian expats as a cheaper wage getting the levels at a cheaper price and a cheaper wage rate. I think that was the main reason why our youth, most of the youth are not engaged in construction sector. Secondly, I think what we need to take care of on this topic is in image, the image that we have already created on such employment opportunities. So I think one thing what we need to take care of this is I think we need to try to create or increase the wage rate, number one, and try to create an image that all skilled workers are given the same opportunity, their progression, the future progression. Actually, NC has already recommended in this direction that after a few years, they are supposed to carry out all those practical tests, and then they have to be upgraded in the next grade, as similar to what as a normal graduate or a general graduates are doing or getting any promoted. I think once, especially why they are not taking up blue collar jobs is once they enter into a job market as a plumber, they resign as a plumber because they don't get all those promotions, sparks, and everything as it's like a general graduates. That's why I think they are not. I think people are not interested in such jobs. That's the career progression is quite limited. That's the reason. I think secondly, I think I would like to answer my moderator through this education system. I think in the education system, what they have come up with a policy is, I think now they are going to develop in their curriculum the TVET, especially the vocational education, has been considered to be taken up as a selective subject from class 9. I think that's a good pointer. I think we may have to come down to class 7 or class 5. I think if you consider this vocational education in their curriculum as a selective subject, I think that would add value. I think what they have done is, I think they have already responded to our queries that they even in the lower classes they are going to have a TVET club even. I think it's I think the government is taking a good a very good decision on, especially on these subjects, because what we need to understand at this critical juncture is, are we trying to create a number the advocacy of virtue of being employed in the system. As you have rightly mentioned that after a few years we'll have numbers of graduates who have passed out from the general colleges or universities but without an employment in the market. Therefore, I think in this situation, number one, the government must come up with a clear strategy or a plan that how they are going to address this. As I have mentioned earlier in my earlier presentation, we are going to have around 19,000 graduates by the end of 12 5-year plan, as per the stats submitted by MOLHR. Therefore, we need to create an employment opportunities. What are the opportunities now? How do we address this? Or we need to change our system in thought process. I was also talking about the paradigm shift that we need to have in the government planning system, because at this juncture, what we have been thinking is education is all about knowing how to read and write. It's not all about how we are going to do it practically. Suppose a mason without an education qualification, if they want to interview and got selected for a job, until and unless they have few the certificates up to class 8 or 10 or 12, they are never employed, though they know it practically well in the government jobs. I think therefore, in such situation, if we have to create an employment according to the education system that we are going to build, I think TVET is the only way now. Especially in such pandemic situations, what we have observed is we have shortage of skilled manpower at this juncture, both in terms of professional or unprofessional. If you need to create this the robust mechanism, I think now we need to refocus on what we are trying to do as an education system. We need to come up with an clear plans from which age they are supposed to take up this, especially the vocational education. During our time, we have been doing this school gardening systems from class PP, and that's where we have adequate substance upon even on farming, on what we are trying to do. And on Saturdays, we need to collect all those fire roots. Even we need to collect from the forest. We need to how to, and then I think we have learned a lifelong lesson to sustain our life. But I think present generations, we are trying to create, we are trying to give them an education and then get graduated. As in, I think most of the parents would agree with me in saying that we always say to our kids, you should be a science graduate, you should be a topper. We never say that you should be a skilled manpower in future so that you can sustain your life. I think that's where we need to change our concept. That's all I think I would like to put it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Temba. It is true, we have to really think from day one, our children are admitted to school. We have to look into their aptitude and then how they are groomed as they grow up. Sadly, of course, through our experience, we have seen that we, as parents, also tend to focus our children taking up science subjects and all this. These are all with no proper studies. These are all our conventional thoughts and mentality on our education. We will carry on this in our next few after one or two questions. Let me come back to Damcho again. 12 5-year plan and also the national contingency plan under tourism resilience sector. One issue is we want to, of course, we want to make this tourism activity all year round, no seasonality. And also we want to take it across the country, 20 Zongkaks, equality, and touch upon all this. If you see the economic contingency plan, there you have phase 1 and phase 2. Both the phases totaling getting some 232 billion Ngiltram as budget. Both in phase 1 and 2, the activities are more towards whatever has been taking place in the districts where tourism is popular. I'm echoing some questions from our virtual audience. They're saying they don't see any activity beyond Bumtang, for instance. What is coming up? If we have to fulfill this, even if you open 2 new entry points in Gyeongju and Samajongkha, if our logistics, if our infrastructure are not developed, we will not see. Some have even remarked that our Zongkaks and Gyeoks are yet to test the benefit of tourism revenue. So on this, what is the take from TCB? What is your outlook towards really expanding and covering the entire 20 Zongkaks and 205 Gyeoks?
Thank you. I saw a similar question from Dechin Rabgel online saying that ECP is focused more on West. And it's true, ECP mostly is focused in the West. But the overall tourism flagship program is actually geared towards tourism deficient areas, which is the East and the West, probably some part of the North. So these are two different things, and tourism flagship is a bigger component of the tourism trying to make Bhutan a year-round destination and trying to tackle the seasonality. So we must differentiate this too. And then I must clarify that the economic contingency plan, people were selected on a first-come, first basis, and then also based on their location, and most of them people are located in the West. And of course, ECP, the objective of ECP is to engage those who were displaced by, the primary goal was those who were displaced by COVID-19 to provide economic opportunities. The other aspect was to actually beautify and enhance infrastructure, especially the crowded infrastructure sites that were difficult to do when there were a lot of tourists, so which is actually mostly in the West. So ECP is different from tourism flagship program. So this tourism flagship program is geared towards the tourism deficient areas. In the West, it's more of a management improving projects for the West under tourism flagship program, where if you compare it in the tourism deficient areas, places like Dagana, East, South are more on new products, new infrastructure. So this is the two clarification I want to make in terms of making tourism even equitably distributed to other parts of the country. So our focus in the West under tourism flagship program is actually to look at the management issues only. Very less in terms of investment on infrastructure and other products. But for the other areas, especially in the tourism deficient areas, it's on new products like campsites, trekking routes, festivals. One of the signature upcoming products was the Highland Festival in the East in the Medasakting, so something like that. So this was under the flagship program in terms of making Bhutan a year-round, and of course the other important is geographical distribution of tourism. Thank you.
Thank you, Damcho. I think this really requires more discussion if we have to really answer all the queries and opinions expressed through online. They're saying some Zongkaks are yet to see a tourist, while others have been filled with tourists. Could be true, may not be true, but we have to really assess situation-wise. I'll come back to Tashi. Tashi said one very important, that notable is multiple job. If you can allow, if you have a system allowing a same person to have multiple jobs, we have from that sense, I think one would conclude that we have a very tight service rules, whether it is BCSF or civil servant, or whether it's a corporate service rule for your Queensland Corporation Limited, for any corporation, our service rules are so tight that once you're in that job, you are not allowed to do. It's illegal. This is so much, what His Majesty also expressed, in the Royal Command, the Royal Address, that we need to relook into a civil service structure and education. I personally would connect this very much to that. So if we were to allow multiple job by a person simultaneously at the same time, we need to really start from the office where one is working. We need to really legally back up. So what is your take? Will we now from here on, based on this discussion, and we get courage now, we are getting bold enough to talk more on this, will we suggest our respective officers to review our service rules so that we allow multitasking?
I think that's the way forward, Nomila, because here the pandemic has revealed that, okay, as Bhutanese, how our coping capacity is very limited because we don't have savings. So a lot of people affected by the pandemic had to rely on His Majesty relief kidu. So if we all had saving culture, I think our coping capacity could have been much better. So, but we cannot blame the people who are affected also, and people like us, because like I said earlier, because our service rules or policies, it says that you cannot do any other job. For me, I was taken by surprise when someone questioned for, like, even in small contributions, you are not allowed to do any profitable job outside your company, say Nola. But then even if that's for your own professional development, where you feel that, okay, by doing that job, it could only extend your professional growth or development. But so in every offices, or like Dasho said, even in RCSs, if we have this working culture, hours-based system, or as long as you fulfill your professional duty, if you should be you or any other person, I think we should be allowed to do multiple jobs as long as it doesn't affect one another. I think that will only it will complement our income, and then definitely I think it will not only raise the living standard of people, but also it will help in saving culture, so that in any future any such crisis, it will help our coping capacity. Did I answer it?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong or right answer. You're expressing your opinion. Any opinion is welcome on such forum. I think ultimately, it's coming down to laws, rules, so tight rules. We hear that, when civil servants go out for further studies, when they come back, if they are late by a few days, their office would reprimand them. RCC would give them another warning. We hear all these things, because somebody has not reported on time, and then to the extent of somebody, losing their position. So these are the things ultimately coming down to lawmaking and the rigidity of the law and the bureaucracy we are living through. So on this, let me continue with Tempa. Lawmaking, legislation. Our idea is the noble intention of lawmaking is to help people, citizens, live their life through comfortably. But often we are blamed for coming out with very rigid, unfriendly law, unfriendly policies. If you have to go to office, you have to follow certain procedures. Otherwise, you will not get your service. In the West, people say that they have very facilitating legislation. It facilitates be it entrepreneurs or private citizens or anybody. The law should be there to help them. But in our case, we are blamed often that our laws are more punitive in action, in nature. Certain clauses specifically mentions if somebody has not done this, penalized with so much of niltrum and then 15 days, and then you have to subject to court of law. All these things. From this perspective, what is your intake now? Are we producing very user-friendly policies, user-friendly laws, or very rigid, very tightening, very punitive law? What's your take on this, Honorable Tempa?
I think it basically depends on your opinion, because one way or the other, what we may have to understand or take from this perspective is, I think any laws or any legislations has to be responsive to the needs of the people. Actually, what we are trying to say is, like, yes, I agree that it may be punitive in some of the cases, but it may not be throughout. On the other hand, I think like number one, what we may have to understand is the intent of the law making is very different, because in some of the cases it should be quite punitive because it demands that way. In some of the cases, I think as my co-panelist, Madam Tashi has already mentioned that we need to be quite adjustable in so many ways. But on the other hand, like I think first and foremost, as a botanist, the way we think, the way we do, I think we need to change our perspective. I think we need to have a paradigm shift in our thought process, as I mentioned earlier. If you are not trying to have that thought process, as I mentioned, paradigm shift in your thought process itself, then we will not be able to achieve anything. Because one way or the other, what we have at this junction is we always believe whatever it's the most of the things that we do is according to the according to not according to what you are supposed to do. You do according to your boss. Am I right? I think in most of the cases we do that way. Therefore, I think first and foremost we need to have a thought process change in so many systems, because as I think as moderator mentioned that we need to try to create enabling conditions and or the conducive environment for anyone to work in there. Not that like we need to restrict, but on the other hand, some people need all those restrictions because we don't adhere to what we are supposed to do even in your time. I think it basically depends on your opinion in what we try to enact laws. As I mentioned earlier, I think first and foremost we need to educate in a different way in the thought process. We should be responsible and accountable in what we are doing. I think if everyone of us take all your responsibility and accountability as you are supposed to take, then I don't think we need anything on this as a law itself. Therefore, my take on this would be is basically depends on an individual, in the individual's behavior, individual's action, and individual's responsibility and accountability that you take. I think it's all co-panelists has already clearly mentioned that if you're jobs or you are allowed to do the job according to your Anila. I think we can sustain. But on the other hand, if your integrity, if your thought process is very restrictive in what you are doing, then I think it would also set a dangerous precedent in near future. I think we can take in in both the ways. That's my take on what she has responded. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tempa. Thank you for your honest, outright opinion on the intent behind lawmaking. As much as lawmaking's intention is to help people, often, especially in the private sector, people do say that they have to have somebody who they know in person to get their things done. In this panel, Damchu, you are in tourism, and then Tashi as a reporter. I think in our own little ways, we should wherever and whenever we can try to help everybody visiting your office, not to ask them to come tomorrow or whenever because you are involved in certain things. Well, we have roughly 3 to 4 minutes formally to wrap up this. However, there are so many questions. I'm tempted to keep on for another 15 to 20 minutes. I will give a minute or two to every one of you. But one question I wanted to ask is this. Of course, this pertains to another again on tourism. One question somebody has asked here, Jigme Tenzin. He's saying we have culture officers in every Zongkok, culture officers placed there. And then, of course, they're busy in their own duties, but how about using them? Because tourism has to reach every Zongkok, and then culture is a major component of a tourism activity. So, if you have any tourism policy or plans or strategies in place where you are going to involve the culture officers in our Zongkoks, so that they in turn train the LG at the LG level, whoever should be involved in promoting tourism activities. Whilst taking this question, can you also I'll give you one more, maybe 30 seconds extra to give you a final comment on this, because this will be the last time I will have to give you all individually. Damchu, please answer this and then wrap up in another extra 30 seconds, and you expressing your overall opinion on this panel discussion.
Thank you. It's a very relevant question. I think we have tried, of course, many people trying to take part in tourism is quite important for us. Not just the culture officers, I think the economic development officers in some Zongkoks, I think looking after not just other economic sectors, but tourism is quite helpful to us. I must share the experience of working with especially like culture officers and Zongkaks. The government mandating through annual performance agreement is quite beneficial for the industry, because then you have a target to work towards. So if the culture officers have targets for tourism, are required to put a targets for tourism, I think it works much more in a better way from our experience. So obviously, of course, TCB is working with the Zongkaks, and then of course the planning officers as well, environment officers as well. So there is one at the moment. The economic development officers are actually coordinating, and in some cases, I think the planning officers at the same time. So culture office are very much part of this. Culture being one of the main components of tourism. So of course, yes, I saw this question as well. Now to conclude, I think we get all the time asked of what is TCB doing at the moment, because there's no tourist. But it seems like because everybody is free, TCB is made to work. So it's almost looking like that. But I want to share with our colleagues in tourism that there are two important questions we get asked all the time. It's when would Bhutan open? And the other question is how would Bhutan open? I think the second question is very difficult. The first question is very difficult even for the government to answer, because we know that the pandemic situation keeps changing. Even though the government wants to say, look, March next year, maybe December this year, this month, it's kind of difficult for the government. But the Tourism Council of Bhutan, in collaboration with the government, is working on coming up with a conditional opening opening date, so that our partners in the industry they can stop guessing, and then start working towards a date. The other thing is, how do we open? I think this is more or less clear. How would we open? I think to initially probably we'd start with air. But what's more clear internationally is how people would travel now. Smaller groups, health conscious, personal health. So these are some of the things I think our partners in the industry should already be thinking. Again, the virtual experience is also very much part of the tourism moving forward. So this is how the two questions of when would Bhutan open and how. And in terms of Tourism Council of Bhutan, we are looking at, of course, the institutional, the governance structure. This is an opportunity for us to work on digitalization. Like I said, we are working on a digitalization program through the support of UNDP. We're hoping that we'd have some good solutions for tourism industry. And of course, the governance is quite important. With the policy now almost being endorsed by the cabinet, it's actually good news for tourism industry of Bhutan. So the overall governance to allow this issues to be addressed, whether it's the more surge in culture tourism versus less in terms of other ecotourism, or of course more number in summer and spring and autumn, and less in winter. So these are all we are looking at addressing through a governance structure, the overall plan. So this is what I think how we are looking in terms of moving forward. So once again, thank you for giving us opportunity, and hope this was quite useful for people who are listening. We are always open, our door is always open, I think, online these days. So if there's anything that we could improve tourism and track this, make tourism more resilient, I think this conference of biodemocracy and resilience is quite at the moment appropriate as we're going through this pandemic. So thank you once again. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Damcho. Tashi, it's your turn to now wrap up. While wrapping up, I will also tag along with one question. You're passionately expressing that we have shortage of 7,000 plus skilled laborers and all this with statistics. If you might have seen from the Build Bhutan project that as of 30th of June 2020, government has identified we have been depending on some 35,000 plus foreign workers, and because of the border closure and all these restrictions, now we just can't avail their service. We have to get in our domestic youth here, and then today roughly 7,000 plus. 7,000 plus skilled labor shortage and 7,000 plus unskilled labor shortage. So on these, as a reporter, I'm sure you will continue on this, to see how this has been, how this will emerge in the coming days. On this note, also close the session from your side, and then what we will do to really ensure that we have a youth taking up these places.
Thank you, Dr. Jigme. I think the pandemic has given us this opportunity to address the issue we have been talking for so long, like be it unemployment, be it this mismatch of our jobs available and job seekers. So as a media, I think we can only create awareness on the importance. As a media professional, I think we can only keep on doing the story, like give a positive spin towards the story by so that it could encourage others to take up the job. I think I would also appeal to those in authority or those in position who can improve and ensure that the work, so that they could ensure that the working environment for those taking up vocational education, it's good. And then, like Dr. Tempa mentioned, to give them salaries, higher salaries, so that it could encourage a lot of people to take up the job. I think that's it. Thank you. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I think, yes, from the media side, we will, we need to, while preparing for this panel discussion, I think I found out that there are lots of things we need to follow up, and I'll ensure that, okay, we will do that. And also we will look at the positive sides, so that we will encourage our youth to take up such jobs. Thank you. And
Thank you, Tashi, for your last final concluding remarks. Coming to our third and the last panelist, Honorable Tempa, you showed us, you took us into different perspectives, from lawmaking to your implementation and on your review activities. Now, His Majesty, the royal address, touched upon two things for us to do now. For us, meaning the government, more than us individually. Of course, in some ways we will be participating, but it has to be taken lead by the government. Overhauling of the civil service structure and looking into education system in particular. You kept stressing on our education is just to pass exams. That's very much disturbing, if you think deep on this. So on this note, as a legislative individual, you as a legislator, I'm sure you would have already read reports, because you will have access to all these reports, and you will be reading so many reports. From your side, I'm not really asking the National Council's opinion, but as individual legislator, if you can also close this session with your take on His Majesty's royal address, and on the importance that our education system should produce citizens, productive citizens, not the robots, not somebody who's looking for a job and then ultimately they don't get a job and they become very unproductive. So from the perspective of civics and citizenship education and the legislation helping these endeavor, please conclude the session.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think the royal address goes far beyond than what we can ponder even at this juncture, because regarding the civil service structurings and reorganizations, I think we have discussed enough in our second term as a member of the parliament, because they were restructuring and the reformation and ODXs were going on. I think from that perspective, we have given, I think we have also even discussed on those issues that time. But on the other hand, I think what I have observed at this critical His Majesty's command is to look into the civil service, to make to create an enabling conditions for civil servants to be creative rather than to be following just a decision what is given to what is trust to them to do. And on the other hand, I think education front, I think we may have to rethink from the base itself, because the children's growing age, their adaptive age is at a very early age. From ECCG to the graduation level, we need to rethink and re-strategize in what we have been doing. I think especially on the curriculum part, what we may have to say is that I have focused mainly on Tibet, because most of the employment opportunities that we saw or that we have in Bhutan is from Tibet. Why I'm trying to emphasize on this is basically during our times, what we have been doing is we have been adapted towards gardening, towards all those social interactions, towards all those physical laborers. Now what is happening is, first and foremost, we need to change our thinking thought process as an individual, because though we may enact any law, as you pointed out clearly earlier, as a punitive law or as an oriented law towards that gearing to achieve that particular product. On the other hand, we as an individual must act rather than acting as a group. First, we must change our thought process, change our thinking, change our strategy, how to bring up our kids. If we are able to educate our kids at home, and as a parents, as a responsible parents, I think we will be able to give this education in what way we think to be adaptive. On the other hand, I would also like to emphasize beyond this question. I think I want to talk a bit on hydropower, if time permits, rather than talking on this, because what I think from this perspective is, I think His Majesty's comment is beyond my brain to ponder over at this juncture, because I have never thought on this, because I have been doing I'm on DESUB duty and I have been running here and there for quite some time for the last. So I think like if time permits, I want to talk a bit on hydropower. We have been discussing more on this, especially on putting all the eggs in one basket. I think we may have to think and say to ourselves, do we have any other options? Because we may blame the climate change, but on the other hand, rivers are running out. Those are our white goals and resources that we need to reevaluate. If you are not able to do all those at this juncture, we may be late. Then climate change will really affect after a few years. Yes, I agree to that climate perspective. But on the other hand, what I want to emphasize is, when you are talking in such pandemic situations, all our exports, all our imports are halted due to this pandemic. But the electricity generated has been well exported without any hindrance. Therefore, government must reprioritize, as far as I am concerned, from the revenue point of view, because we need revenue in order to develop, in order to remap, in order to re-strategize anything. Therefore, I think hydropower is key to our revenue production. We have been discussing, as my co-panelists has clearly mentioned, regarding tourism. We must first see how we can sustain this, what we have been doing, in what we have been initiating at this juncture. How can we remap or how can we re-evaluate on all those? And then I think we must do the impact studies and then carry out forward. Lastly, I would like to first and foremost thank to the organizers and to everyone. And I would like to apologize to all and every viewers that I have not been able to do justice on this very important subject as my co-panelist has done. So therefore, please pardon me from those. I would say, please pardon me from those mistakes that I made. So lastly, thank you for having us here. And then I think it was very insightful for me and to learn from my co-panelists, and I have learned so much from here. And then I'll carry out in my mind when I do my duty as a legislator, the things that we have discussed, the things that we can support each other everywhere. I think it was insightful and very good learning experience for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tempa, Honorable National Council member from Lunche Zongkhak, and to my other two esteemed panelists, Damcho Rinzin from Tourism Council of Bhutan, Tashidema from Queensland Corporation Limited. You all, I believe, I would tend to believe that the three of you have really expressed everything in this couple of hours discussion, starting from all eggs in one basket to using our latent potential youth to education system, and then to do we have any choice besides hydropower? I'm sure this will really this is something if you have time we will debate it for another 1 hour and then come out with very solid discussions. However, all things have to come to an end. To close this session, I thank you so much. I only will believe that with this COVID pandemic challenges, we are woken up with such reality, unprecedented reality, and then on the other hand, it was a sort of a blessing in disguise that we realize our own potential also now. With challenges, then it comes opportunities, and we are here. We have been living through His Majesty at the helm, and then as long as all of us individually put our effort, nothing will fail. I personally believe, I'm in the private sector, and as long as we have faith in ourselves, starting from the policy making, which should provide enabling environment. Dr. Tempa kept stressing on the word enabling environment. Our laws and policies should provide that environment for us to play, not to really tighten our neck. That's what I was referring to as punitive law with facilitating law. And then some have commented that we don't have user-friendly laws. That's what we see on the virtual comments. So to close this session formally, let us all believe in ourselves. His Majesty has been guiding us under his personal care and guidance. nothing will falter, and our government is always on their toes. As long as we believe in ourselves, we can do it. We are doing it. All of us are doing it. With this, thank you so much, organizers there, my friend Dr. Sachin Darsangi and Dr. Nitasha in London. Thank you so much